folks. Welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. And this is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the ambassador of nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
And I think I'm going to move this mic back just a hair because that looks a little bit loud. Okay, so today's subject matter is not easy to talk about. Not because it's emotional to me or you, really, but because it's just one of those things neither one of us really ever know the right kind of thing to say to people.
The kind of thing, yeah, it's one of those things that there are people for whom it's a real barrier to faith. Usually people who are already in the church, and it becomes a real barrier to staying with the church. And yeah, honestly, I don't know what to say. Not that I don't understand all of the reasons why, that it doesn't invalidate the church, you should stay in the church, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But all of the logic isn't really what they're looking for when right. People bring this stuff up.
So the reason this came up is I was at a party last week, and this guy who had heard our podcast, approached me, and it turns out he was a cradle Catholic, I guess, but never really big into the church, and he was up in the Dayton area, and there was a priest up there. He said he was like any other young man, teenager who wasn't really interested at all in religion. And then this priest enters and his life, and just kind of started to get him excited about being a Catholic. And he felt kind of, wow, this is kind of cool. And then the priest never did anything wrong to him, but then he finds out, I don't know if it was a year later or what, but the priest molested some kids. Little boys.
No, this was a definite thing. It wasn't just that he heard accusations, but that he's certain that it really happened.
Yeah, it did really happen, and the bishop he said the name as if I should know who that is, and I pretended to know who that is, but he said the bishop, took him out and said, we're going to move him where he's never going to be around children again. And then it was like 5-10 years later, he found out that they just again. Moved him to another group of kids. And
wow.
He said after that, he just...
Now, I'm going to interrupt real quickly here. Do you know what timeline this was? Who was the bishop at this time?
I believe it was Pilarczyk.
Pilarczyk, okay. Yeah, that's...
in Cincinnati. So, and I guess Cincinnati Archdiocese reaches up to Dayton.
Right.
The thing is, again, the priest never did anything to hurt him. And it wasn't, while there was some principle there, it wasn't one of those deals where I think what pushed him over the edge was not the fact that this priest had done something so terrible. The guy was drinking, so there was a lot of talk that didn't really lead anywhere, the way you do when you drink.
Right.
And right. But what I got out of what he was trying to say was I felt like a fool, falling for this guy and thinking this is serious. Wow, this is great. And then all of a sudden he's just a bad guy. And I don't hear a whole lot of talk about that when I hear, and we talk a lot about these bishops and a lot about some of these bad priests, and we talk
the damage
about
they do and how bad they are and everything. Yeah. But what do you say to somebody whose life was influenced by one of them? Not necessarily a victim, but as you say here, whose life was influenced by them, and who are in a position where they feel like, wow, it was this person's perspective on the faith and on the church and so on and so forth that got me really interested, and now I find out they didn't really buy it because look at what they're doing.
Yeah, and I guess the best way to describe the feeling that he that it looked like he was trying to express to me is like when you're in love with your wife your whole life, and then one day you find out she's been cheating on you, and it's just incredible punch in the gut. It's like, whoa, that you're not. Now, I don't know what exactly that feels like because my wife has never cheated on me, but I have had a very serious girlfriend cheat on me, and it's a devastating blow. And it's like, wow, I just fell for everything. I mean, I never even suspected, and here I just been played for a fool. And I guess that's what he was trying to express to me. And I thought, it does make for a good subject. Not that I could really address it real well, but I don't know if anyone can address it real well. But it's kind of like I think that's a good analogy, because then it's not like, okay, my wife's cheating on me. Well, all right, we're going to get a separation, and I'll go think about it while I decide. Of course, the church says you have to forgive her eventually if you can't. If she's going to stop, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, it's kind of like take the situation with the girlfriend, or maybe even a fiance, and you find out she's unfaithful, and then somebody's trying to make an argument to you that says, she was a bad apple, she did some really bad stuff, but you still need to be part of the rest of her family. Yeah,
you gotta keep visiting her parents and hang out with her brothers and stuff like that. That's almost kind of like what it's like then for somebody like that.
I imagine. Yeah.
When you say, but you got to stay in the church,
or even to a lesser degree, it's like, okay, this sucked. You got played here, but you can't give up on the idea of marriage and faithfulness and stuff like that. Which,
that too, yeah.
There are plenty of
somebody could become jaded, right?
People out there who have that happen and do give up, and I knew several gay men who I think turned that way because of girls that cheated on them.
Oh,
I knew at least one, and there was another one that I knew that I thought, I think this is. I don't think this was someone who molested him. I think this was maybe he was already leaning that direction and suddenly decided he's turned off on girls altogether. I don't know. But either way, to have to go in and see her family once a week or visit them for Christmas, even if she's not there,
right?
But it being her family would just feel really awkward.
So it's kind of like that when a priest, when the priest who has become the face of the church for you, your catechism wasn't done very well when you were growing up, perhaps, which is most cradle Catholics, in the latter half of the 20th century and onward. So your catechism wasn't great, and so there's some priest, maybe it's some priest personally and that you meet and talk to and he guides you. Maybe it's a priest that you have just developed he really knows where it's at and he's leading me in my spiritual life, but it's like a personality priest or something like that.
Yeah.
In either case, that priest, for a time, is the face of the church for you. Now, of course, you're supposed to grow beyond that at some point in your faith development, but there's lots of people who are going to be in that position, and it takes years to get really well beyond that if you haven't been very catechized at first. So it's kind of like you're returning to the same kind of development that should have gone on between the ages of 4 and I don't know, 13 or something.
Yeah.
And so now he's the face of the church for you, and then that happens. You realize he's a scoundrel.
Yeah, and the thing is that's probably the case with way too many Christians in America, is that whether it's the Catholic Church or anyone else, their relationship to the religion is through a specific person that inspired them or something. And instead of learning about the church and about God, they made it about, I hate to use the word, they made it about fraternity.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's exactly what we're not supposed to be doing, because the religion is about our relationship with God, not our relationship with our brothers or sisters. Mm-hmm. It can be. They link, but...
Yeah, it's we're supposed to be unified in all pursuing God. We're supposed to be unified in helping each other pursue God. And there is a communal aspect to the church, but not by way of personality.
Yeah.
That's
the communion is answer.
Right.
But
how does somebody, psychologically speaking, how do they get past that? I mean, how do you even convince them that it's worth getting past?
Yeah.
That the beauty of belonging to the church is something that supersedes and overwhelms that kind of negative experience.
Right. And it came kind of natural for us, because the face of the church was Mom and Dad for us.
Our parents, largely, yeah.
Mom and Dad.
And then a little bit older, we had, even if it was a typical modern parish, the priests, at least while we were growing up there, in my experience, were decent priests. We had Father Mick, later Father Wolfer.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, I never developed any kind of relationship with any of them.
Oh, okay.
They were the guy who stood there.
I had to go to confession too.
I go to confession to them, but I didn't know any of them, and it was. Mm-hmm. I mean, what I learned about the church, I learned from a book, and a book doesn't really disappoint you that much. If you do, it does, you just close it and throw it away and get another one. But not that many people are learning through books nowadays. It's almost, when you talk to people who are real deep in their religion, it's almost assumed that a person somehow brought them to that point, that they were inspired by someone else, instead of that they just they looked into this stuff and okay, well this makes a lot more sense than all the other things people are saying. But that's how it was with me, so I don't even relate to having that kind of a relationship with person in a church.
I'm laughing because it was kind of like that for me, but it wasn't even that. It was, I had, even as early as 6th grade, there were teachers who would say things that, the even meaning themselves to be Catholic, they would say things that I didn't like hearing. Like there was one nun who said, well, the miracle of the Red Sea was, didn't really happen that way. It's just that the sea dried up enough at that time of year or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, stuff like that. Or yeah. So, I mean, little things like that. But what happened was, and then, of course, once I got into LaSalle, this even became stronger.
Yeah, I guess so.
I basically went and read stuff, good, traditional stuff, as a sort of kind of act of rebellion against teachers.
So you can go in, next time they say that out loud, you'll have a rebuttal. And
say, exactly.
I wonder, all of my kids have a little bit of that rebellion streak in them too. And several times when they would go to their CCD classes or whatever, I would catch some of what the teacher is saying, and I would, on the ride home, I'm like, look, guys, I have to tell you this. She's completely wrong. She's 100% wrong.
Yeah.
And I would
Isn't
even
it sad
show
you have
them.
To do that?
I'd say, you don't have to tell her this, but you might want to bring it up, but this is what the case is. This is what the church teaches. So it's not a personal experience. That's the wrong way to say it. Our relationship with God never really relied on a relationship with another person.
Right. I mean, we have to be introduced through other people. That's the nature of the church.
Yeah.
even when we're reading books that were written by doctors of the church, by saints, by people who are writing about saints, and but there's not supposed to ever be a cult of personality involved in our draw to the church. And I think today, because so many people are poorly catechized growing up, especially, I think converts are a little bit less prone to that phenomenon than cradle Catholics. But cradle Catholics growing up, and it's like the church is just ho-hum. It's a place where you get dragged to every Sunday. Yeah. And then you find that personality that gives you a reason to become excited about what you're doing.
Yeah, good. And, he makes a good youth group, and he makes everything fun and all that. And wow, okay, there's something to this, maybe.
Yeah, but it's really still just that personality. You haven't really, it's like your own relationship with the church is still in a bit of a preteen phase during that. But I'm not blaming people for being there. It's a necessary thing, I think, that people go through that, but they're supposed to go through it with their parents when they're young kids, not when they're young adults.
And it's not even it's not necessarily just a shallow thing where you're kind of completely relying on someone else's energy. If someone invites you to go volunteer with them, and you go volunteer at the soup kitchen or an old folks home, and there's a good feeling with that. It makes you feel good. So you start doing it more, and you happen to be doing it with them. And so it's not just their personality, but you're still basically going on a feeling. Yeah. Instead of really learning.
And even if you get beyond that, that's actually a good analogy. Let's suppose that it's that kind of a thing. So they introduce you to this particular soup kitchen. They run this shelter mission downtown, and you start going there yourself without them, even though they introduced it to you and took you along the first few times. So now it's something that you're both doing, but you're doing it on your own, and then you start maybe doing more things for the kitchen, like running food pickups during some of their charity drives or whatever, and helping stock and whatever else people do it at these kinds of places. And then you find out that the person who got you into all this has been selling drugs to kids, and maybe even uses the soup kitchen to somehow
front money,
as one of his channels or something like that. Okay, well, even though you've moved beyond him in terms of your commitment to that work, it's still going to put a bad taste in your mouth about the whole thing. Yeah, because it was. So then it's like, how do you get past it? It's like you've got to somehow do some kind of cleansing in order to maintain that commitment to the good work you're doing. Right. And then you find out that, okay, it wasn't just him, but it was, a whole bunch of the other guys associated with the same organizations, and, 1 out of every 5, or maybe 3 out of every 5 regional coordinators for this soup kitchen network knew about it and were turning a blind eye. It's like, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing? So how do you convey to someone this idea of the church as a supernatural body that you don't have to walk away from because of something like that?
To start with, I think you've at least got to examine what you thought about this particular priest, and maybe why your own expectations are what was wrong. For example, if you look at the changing relationship between a boy and his dad, I mean, he's a kid. His dad is pretty much Superman. Whatever his dad says is.
Knows everything, can do anything.
Yeah. And then he turns into a teenager, and it's like The opposite. But he's so stupid. I can't believe my dad's so stupid. How did my dad ever get this far without me here to insult him?
That's right.
And then, it kind of flips back again when you reach adulthood. But you
start seeing some of the challenges. Okay, wait a minute. Dad's been through this. Dad, how did you handle this? You start going to. He doesn't quite. It doesn't quite revert, but it then becomes a more. It develops into a adult to adult relationship.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
But one that preserves that honor.
You start to see, well, he's just a human being just like me. And he made some mistakes, and it is what it is. Now, you see the same kind of thing with things like the fun uncle who comes over and drinks a lot and is loud and obnoxious. And when you're a kid, you think, it's funny. He's so cool.
Yeah.
I wish my dad were that cool. But
and then you see one of those old family home videos as an adult, and you think, wow, he's actually kind of a jerk.
What a jackass. Yeah, he's an alcoholic. He's a bum. He doesn't work. But you have to understand that most relationships are like that. As you move through life, your view of people and even people who are very close to you is going to change. And it's because you're growing, not because they're getting better or worse. Look, the guy was the priest who did this. He didn't start doing it after he met you. He's always been that person. He's always been someone who could put on a mask and fool a bunch of people, and then do terrible things while everybody's back was turned. You happen to grow and suddenly understand, this guy's a human being, and he's a bad human being, and someone I would want nothing to do with. But I'm just saying it. You have to start by understanding that.
Yeah.
But then there has to be a point where you realize that this whole church thing and the religion thing really has nothing to do with him, and it's about your relationship with God. Just you and God. Forget everything else. That's what the religion is about. You and God.
And
and making that connection.
I want to be careful here because I want to make sure that people don't misunderstand us and think that when we say that we're saying it in the same sense that a Protestant would say it. Because I think a lot of
Puritans.
Protestants are like, it's you and God and there's no church. The church itself isn't.
And pray.
When we say it's you and God, realize that the church as a total body, not the individual people. The individual people make up parts of the body, but the total body of the church is the body of Christ. And so that's part of the God side of you and God. It's important to keep that in mind. But, here's the other thing that I think people, if there was a way to convey this to people, that there's two things here going on. First of all, to recognize that nobody ever in the world, except for Jesus Christ himself, nobody in the world ever brings holiness to the church. Anybody, the holiest saint receives their holiness through the church, from God. The church is a conduit of grace, and we receive holiness from the church, never, ever the other way around. And so when you see these people who are within the hierarchy of the church and they're behaving so badly, don't make the mistake of thinking, that's what the church is giving them, is that unholiness. No, what they're doing is they're turning off their reception of holiness from the church when they behave that way. And the second thing is,
even the Virgin Mary,
received
was
her
made
holiness
holy by God,
right,
through the church.
Mm-hmm. And so the second thing is that one of the first initial fundamental things that we try to teach children as they're, we're teaching them religion and that kind of stuff. And of course, pain is, and the experience of others, treating you badly and everything, from the very earliest childhood, knowledge when you start getting old enough to have interactions with other people. That's part of it. And so, bad things happen. People experience pain. They experience meanness from other people. They experience, physical, environmental disasters and so on and so forth. God, and we tell kids from the very earliest age, God can use bad events, unfortunate events, tragic events, as well as the evil that other people commit in order to bring about good in those who trust in Him. So the saints were martyred. I mean, any religion class worth its salt, and if the class you have your children in doesn't do this, take them out and put them in a different one. Yeah. It is teaching them from the earliest ages about martyrdom, about people who die for Christ. And okay, well, the fact that they're dying is a bad thing. There are evil people who are committing these sins of killing them. But what is God doing? He's taking that evil act and elevating that person into the glory of martyrdom, so that person can then pray for us and help us to keep strong in our faith. So the point is that God can use evil people who do evil things, and even the very evil things that they do, to His ends for those who trust. So if that one priest that happens to, really be a creep is the one who got you excited about the faith, forget the priest, you're excited about the faith. That's the good God brought out of that.
Right. And if
I don't know how to convey that
about
to the
priest,
heart,
then you were never really excited about the faith.
Right, about the faith. Think, and that's something, I think, if maybe that's the thing, is to, if you're talking to somebody who's been through something like this, through a disillusionment, try to get them to recall what they were really excited about. Chances are they really were excited about the faith. It might have been that excitement was through the priest. It might have been that the sense of companionship, maybe even a little bit of camaraderie, fed into it, and so on and so forth. But chances are, at some level, they really were excited about the faith itself. I think you try to get them to recall that, and then point out, well, that was what God was giving you, and He was using an evil man to do it, but He still gave it to you.
Yeah. I don't know how much more I can add to that. It's, again, it's such a foreign thing to me. But I do kind of remember, like, what was that guy's name? He was on EWTN all the time. He was a priest.
Oh, Father Karapi.
Karapi. Yeah,
he was a bad one too, wasn't he?
I was really into him. Now he was. Yeah. I don't think he was. He didn't do anything with little kids or anything. He would just.
It was just women.
He had hired prostitutes, and I think he was back.
I say
on
that
cocaine.
glibly, but yeah, but and he, for whatever time that he was
to
in
come
the
back
ministry,
to the monastery, and he didn't. Last I heard.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's too bad. I mean, because his redemption is something we would want too. But for that time that he was on EWTN, okay, God used him as a mouthpiece or whatever, and probably brought a lot of people, who for whom his style appealed to them.
Yeah,
brought them into generally the whole EWTN thing. And then, of course, the EWTN thing becomes the Catholic thing. And
it kind of opens up
and
doors.
People who transition through that, okay, God accomplished that through him, even though he went down a wrong path. Now, I didn't get the impression that he was all along, a bad guy. He had some problems. He recovered. He became a priest, and then he slipped back into old habits or something like that.
It was more about that. I think he got caught up into the. Because it's not like the church paid him as a spokesperson. His entire ministry was his. And, of course, he had to support himself, and he had to support the ministry. So he started making a lot of money.
And he got caught up into that.
I think it's just all that money and the fame made it easy for him to slip back into old habits, and that's probably what happened. But
well, hey, God, if you're listening, we don't have old habits of cocaine and prostitutes. If you'd like to let our ministry make some money.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't get on cocaine, and I won't hire prostitutes.
But no, I guess we shouldn't be quite so glib. But the point is, now, of course, Satan has his
well, okay,
his goals too. So what is Satan trying to do?
To? Because
Satan is trying to use these guys to disillusion people. That's his whole game.
One thing I said to him, and I didn't go real far into it, is why does it do this? This computer thing just keeps popping up, and it just says, you do not have a virus.
Well, thanks.
Well, I don't
You've
care.
got a virus
Why are you
that
telling
keeps
me
telling
this?
you don't have a virus.
Okay, I said, well, look, let's say there is a God and there is a church, the way the Catholic Church describes it.
Yeah.
In that case, you have two sides, good and evil, God and the devil. Those are the two sides. There's not a third side. There's only all the way good or all the way evil. Or at least that's where you end up. So that means that the devil is constantly trying to get as many people as he can to come to his side. Don't you think that's where he would strike? In the church?
Yeah.
In these men that we all look up to? The religious who have turned their religion into a career and are maybe even accomplishing a lot. But if he's got anything on them, he will use it, and he will try twice as hard on that priest as he will on anyone else. So basically this guy's been taken over by the enemy. So does that mean the good is bad now, or does it just mean that guy has switched sides? You can't switch to the bad side just because someone else switched to the bad side.
Yeah, that's a
you still got to be on the good
side. If you say,
side.
okay, well, I'm gonna reject the church because some of the people in the church rejected the church.
Yeah,
that's kind of what that turns into.
Yeah, and then I guess you could go back and say, well, I don't, and I hear this argument a lot. Mm-hmm. A God that good would not have a church that evil, or people in the church who are that evil. And I just don't believe that's God's church. Put it that way. I don't believe this is really God's church.
So these are the people who say. In fact, there was a guy I briefly.
Well, hold on a second.
Okay, you've got more.
Yeah, one thing I would have said to him and anyone else who was in the exact conversation that we were in. See, this guy sought me out for a conversation. I didn't approach him and try to talk to religion about him. And I would say, then why are you talking to me about this? Because I think a lot of these people really do believe that they're missing
want to
something
be convinced.
Because they want to be pulled back into the church somehow, and they're looking for someone to convince them.
To give them the reason. Yeah. You know what? And actually, that's the worst thing you can do is say, well, yeah, it's pretty bad, buddy. You got to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Whatever you decide, I'm sure, it'll be the right thing. You got to find your own path. That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
If people are crying for help to say, hey, give me a reason to stay in the church. Give me a reason to stay on the path of salvation. That's the one thing we must do is give them the reason. Or give them some reason, any reason, anything that we can pull to our mind. I mean, even if it sounds bumbling and later we think of 1,000 other things we should have said and we feel like we said the wrong stuff, say something and then trust the Holy Spirit to work that.
Yeah, that is a big thing. Whenever you're talking to someone who is in that kind of a circumstance, is to stop for a second and say a silent prayer. Because you don't want to say the wrong thing here, and chase them away. But
I mean, if someone is openly talking to you about this, in a discussion kind of way, and not just, like trying to throw, pellets at you or something like that for being Catholic, but in a real discussion, that's an opportunity. That's could be the Holy Spirit set that up. So you have a responsibility.
Right. The question is, are you going to let this one guy destroy everything that's good? Because if you reject God or you reject his church, you're rejecting the good part in life because of this one guy who was sour. And it would have been like all the other apostles when Judas betrayed Jesus, and the other apostles were like, well, screw this,
Yeah.
Or the disciples or the crowds of people, they all saw Judas betray Jesus, and they're like, well, even the bishops are bad. How can we trust these people? Or even when Peter himself.
Peter himself denied Jesus, yeah.
And
if the others had seen that...
Now, of course, Peter was sorry for that, and Judas wasn't. And there are priests out there who are sorry, even though they can't ever be around children again, and they can never be trusted again. I'm sure there are priests out there who are sorry. I hope.
Yeah.
But there are also those who aren't, and I guess they both got to be dealt with.
Is to realize that, and this is why the bishops screening for the priesthood is so important. Complete abdication of responsibility on the part of the bishops.
Yeah.
In terms of screening for the priesthood and making sure that the priests that are, the men that are going into the seminaries are real priestly material, and are going to stay the line on holiness so that they don't give scandal to the church and so on and so forth. In fact, they have to be the men who are not tempted by these kinds of sins.
Right.
But one of the things to realize is that everybody's tempted by something. And there may be, one person may have a temptation that another person simply doesn't have. They look at that person and think, wow, you must be some kind of sicko because you've got that temptation.
Yeah.
And the other person looking back may look at your temptation and think exactly the same thing because he doesn't have your temptation. Everybody's tempted by something.
That is something that I always try to do for myself when I'm tempted to be judgmental. And I don't even want to say be judgmental. Look, a guy who touches little girls or little boys, they're bad people.
Yeah, he needs to be put away. Yeah,
punished and whatever.
He could be sorry for it.
He's a bad guy,
but then he needs to be kept away from kids. Sure, that's fine. But
I'm not going to be the one to put him in hell. That's someone else's job.
Right.
And while I'm thinking to myself, that is such a terrible thing, I also try to look. I've got a problem with food, and you wouldn't know it because of how skinny I am. But
you're the one who eats half the cake
so
every time.
Dysfunctional when it comes to food. It's like I'll eat a whole bag of candy bars for breakfast and then not eat anything until the next day and eat whatever I feel like that day. And every now and then I go in these little kicks. I'm going to eat healthy.
I'm sorry, dude. I would really hate to use the bathroom after you.
I don't do that often. I'm just saying I have.
Oh, okay.
My point is, I'm almost without ability to fight off temptations when it comes to. I might go a day without eating, without even noticing that I haven't ate yet. But on Good Friday, I have to eat. I don't even know why.
Think about food all day long.
It's
there. Yeah,
Good Friday is the hardest day of the whole year for me. But I just think about it. If food's my temptation, what if I had that same temptation for something so much more worse and so much more destructive? And
right.
I would assume that me thinking about the fact that I'm destroying someone else's life, I would assume that would help me not do it, but I don't know.
And there are people who, because of sin, because of original sin that broke us as a human race, there are also people who have neurologic disorders that
is true.
Feed into both the kind of temptations they have and their ability to recognize temptations. There's people who don't have the same emotional reaction against certain kinds of things. There's certain kinds of things that we might think about in terms of like, for example, I don't know. I like to see how things work. I like to see parts. I like to see them working together and that kind of stuff. And then I think, well, it would be cool to I don't know, skin a live frog or something like that. Well, but I have that emotional response that thinks about the pain and immediately recoils from that. There are people who don't have that.
Right.
Who don't have that response. Okay, they have to go on purely a knowledge of good and evil in order to end on the right decisions.
Right.
Because they don't have an emotional guide to it.
And I think that's especially true with sexual sins. Especially for someone who has been abused. And I make assumptions because I hear them a lot, and I don't know if it's 100% true, but I've always heard that most of the people who molest kids have been molested themselves. That seems plausible to me. So
it does to me too, because
if that's
then
true,
they're
then
in a position.
You've got a guy who he has this weird temptation. If he's a Catholic priest, he knows it's wrong.
Yeah.
And his only defense against the temptation is the fact that it's wrong. And you got to remember, the devil knows that he was molested.
Right.
So the devil knows that there's something a little bit clocked in his mind and probably doesn't work the way it does for the rest of us. And the devil uses it. And,
when we are, it sounds like a platitude, about idle mind is the devil's playground.
Yeah.
That's actually more true than people realize. When you are not focusing your mind on something, the devil actually has the physical ability to plant thoughts in your head.
Yeah.
So you take somebody who's already got the, that childhood experience, maybe a childhood experience, and that person who was doing that to them was somebody that was a caregiver so that is their experience of adult affection and being taken care of and everything else. And then maybe only, after it's been going on, maybe some years later, maybe long after it stopped, is when they realized that there was anything at all wrong with it.
Yeah.
Well, but now they've got that in their past that formed their sense of adult-child relationships, and now they've got to constantly work against that. Right. There's 1,001 reasons why somebody could be in that kind of a situation, which is why bishops have to be much better about screening candidates for the priesthood.
Yeah,
but the thing is,
I would think that with all the things we're able to do, something like that should be much easier to spot. And this is how the bishops have failed us.
Yeah.
It almost sounded like we were getting ready to make excuses for people. We're not making excuses. We're saying, number one, this was the failure of the bishops, and that's why it's so important for the bishops to demand that their priests practice sexual purity. And it's also, you should at least keep in mind how much influence the devil has over those people. And it's precisely because when that priest does something wrong, it will drive away people like you. And the devil knows that, and that's why he tempts him so much. Not just because he wants the priest to sin, but because he wants those sins to trickle down into people leaving the church. That's the purpose of it.
That's the devil's goal. Get people to leave the church. So, there was a guy, you remember, I don't know if you ever went to Old St. Mary's way back when they didn't used to have a Tridentine Mass at Old St. Mary's. This is when the Tridentine Mass was, you still needed an indult from the bishop And Mom was doing the thing at St. Monica's up by...
I remember that. I had never gone to the church.
Okay, so they had the English
talking,
Novus Ordo Mass. Okay, yeah. So they had the English Novus Ordo Mass, and there afterwards we would go next. They had the building next door that the church owned, and we'd go over there for coffee and donuts and stuff. And Uncle Joe was always there, and I had met some of the people around there, and we all kind of became a group. Half the time I was Grandma Braden's ride there. She went there every week too. But we would all kind of gather there and talk. And there was one guy there, and I forget his name, and I wouldn't say his name if I remembered it. But he brought this. This was way back. I was still in high. This had to be like mid '80s, and some of the scandals were starting to come out of the priests, being child molesters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he had this question. This guy, he said, "Here's the thing that really bothers me, and that makes me struggle, almost even struggle with my faith." But it was more like it wasn't that he was doubting his faith. It's just like things aren't making sense. He says these priests, they have to go to school to be a priest. They have to go to seminary. And they have to study moral theology and all this kind of stuff. And they learn, about everything. They know better than any of us that they're going to go to hell if they do these things. And yet they do them anyway. How can that be? How can somebody who has studied that and knows that he's going to go to hell for it do that? And I think something that we've been kind of slow to pick up on, and it's kind of been coming out in little fits and starts. People have sort of uncovered gradually what was really going on, is precisely that these priests, as they were going through these seminaries, they weren't actually being taught that they would go to hell for doing bad things.
Right.
These priests were often going through seminary programs that may have even included classes that present the theological viewpoint, for example, that nobody's actually going to end up in hell, or that, whatever you do, as long as you're truly remorseful, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
As long as you still also want heaven, you're going to end up getting heaven. As absurd as that sounds. So, that's one of those things is to realize that, again, This lies at the feet of the bishops. A whole generation of priests, probably two generations of priests, have not been properly taught and formed as priests in the seminaries. And so they're not being screened well, they're not being properly formed, and then they're being thrown out into situations that they have not been prepared for in terms of temptations. Often they're priests that already have childhood baggage that's going to open them up to unnatural temptations. So you've got a house that the housekeepers, the bishops, have completely neglected for years. What's that house going to look like?
Right. And here's the thing, and this... Okay, this is the part that we're just now starting to get a sense of, and we don't know how bad it is, and we don't know how deep it is, but it's even worse than priests who have been taught that they won't go to hell. There's actually groups, and we don't know how big they are, who are purposely on the other side.
Yeah.
We know now that there are some
priesthood.
satanic bishops who
we knew that it was. We knew that the whole homosexual infiltration was going on. Now we're learning, satanic. It's even worse than that.
So you've got
worse than the homosexual. It's actually satanic.
And again, I would point out that this is God's house. Satan wants to be in God's house, and he wants to drive all the faithful out of God's house. Yeah. He wants to corrupt it at its very core. Now, Jesus Christ promised us that it wouldn't happen completely. That the body of Christ might get sick, but that we would still have Christ as its head, and we would still have the truth.
Yeah.
And so far, he's done that.
And so you've got, I mean, the blinds are all torn and in tatters, and the furniture is all ripped up and overturned, and you know the curtains and the bedclothes and the upholstery has disintegrated with age without being, you know, rejuvenated and that kind of stuff because of the neglect of the bishops. So that's kind of like the house you're in, but you know what? That's the house. Even if, okay, what we've realized is there's a lot of work to do, but you walk outside and you're outside. You're in the cold. So your options are either come into the house and start fixing it up, or stay out in the cold.
That's what that's what I would say to people is all right, this sucks that it happened to you, but you got to roll up your sleeves and you got to help us clean the house, because that's what the lay people are trying to do right now, and it's really difficult because we're not getting any cooperation all the way up to the Pope, but it's still what we're trying to do. And there is no other house. You can't go across the street. You might think you can go over there and pray the Bible and read the Bible once a day and say a few prayers, and that'll be the same as going to church, but it won't be. You won't be in God's house until you come back to the Catholic Church.
Right. Everything else is a mirage.
That's the tough message that I
and no matter how tattered the house becomes.
It's hard to say that, but it's still the truth.
You know, a guy that I for a short time actually entered into a business venture with. It didn't work out, and we kind of parted ways, but he was also Catholic, and he was talking about how his father-in-law was kind of saying that you know, with the exact same thing with the sexual scandal and everything going on. And he kind of announced that he had decided that he was going to go over and join the Episcopal Church. Now, this was before the Episcopal Church itself in America became, you know, went off the deep end. I mean, you know, now they've got the whole female ministers and they're pro-gay and everything else. I think they're you know, completely out there. But the thing is, you know, back then the Episcopal Church was basically the American version of the Anglican Church, which, you know, still had a lot of the forms of their prayers and sacraments still reflected their Catholic roots and so on and so forth. And so he said, well, I think I'm going to go over there because of all the sex scandals here. And so this colleague of mine, you know, was telling me that, and you know, we're both engineers. I think he's mechanical. I'm electrical. We were both really into software. And when you do software, and actually any kind of product development, but especially with software that is important, there's this concept called traceability. You got to start with the requirements. What do you need the thing to do? And then from that, you establish a design, but the reason for everything in the design is in order to accomplish what the requirements are. So the design has to trace to the requirements, and then the same thing for the code. And then when you run your tests, you need your tests to trace to the requirements too. If you just trace your tests to the code, you might miss something. So you got to trace it to the requirements. So there's this concept, this word traceability figures very largely in that industry. And so I thought this was kind of clever. He said, you know, the problem is you may think that you're getting yourself into a better situation, but what you're really doing is giving up traceability, because the Catholic Church is the only one that has full traceability to Christ.
Yeah, that is true. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, we're going to play house over across the street instead of doing all the work that's necessary. Yeah. And it's like in America right now, everybody's arguing about the Senate. And it's like, wait a minute, guys. They just stole an election from us. our elections don't mean anything if we let this happen.
If we can't, if we're going to let this keep going on. We're just
playing house after this. We're pretending that our vote matters, and I guess in some small extent in these little elections that really don't have an outcome because the same group of people are still ruling us, but we're still playing house if we don't if we let this go. I don't know why I felt like I had to bring in politics here, but it's been driving me nuts.
It is.
I'm watching the country. I don't know what's going to happen, so I guess I'm like everyone else. I'm just scared.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. There's a few ways it could go, but I think something that is momentous and rupturous would be better than the path that we've been on of being gradually taken over by China.
Yeah, I think so too. And we know now that it's like it's not even. At one time you would say it's the Chinese ideal that is taking over. It's the communist point of view that is taking over America.
Yeah.
But now we know
you're saying that
it's actually China.
Literal China control of major economic sectors. And it's really through those economic sectors that they mean to achieve eventual control of people
eventually
themselves.
The entire world. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the Chinese goal.
Okay.
Anyway,
I guess we've exhausted the subject.
Yeah, because we're moving on to other stuff.
Yeah. So I guess maybe we should move into current events.
Yeah, let's talk about some stuff.
Okay. So MasterCard and Visa cut financial ties with Pornhub because
I read something about that.
Thousands of really bad videos, rape, pornography, child sexual abuse, and see, I would have thought that the FBI would have been using that the whole time to track down bad people, but
yeah, why isn't that the case? I guess I don't know. Maybe people can upload videos anonymously or something. I don't know.
I guess that's what it was, but we know there's really no such thing as anonymity on a lot of these sites. I mean, well, maybe there is. I don't know. I don't know enough about
VPN,
networking to.
Yeah, I can explain that to you offline. Well, but yeah, you can be fully anonymous. But here's the thing that kind of, I mean, people have pointed out, and it is a victory of sorts that they're doing this, and so it's like, hey, there's a sense that makes me very uncomfortable of this, and it's, hey, look at this. MasterCard and Visa are severing ties with Pornhub because they are not exercising proper control over the videos that get uploaded. They're allowing themselves to be traffickers in true rape films, child pornography, and that kind of stuff, which is contributing to human trafficking. So now, maybe with this kind of pressure, they're going to clean up their act.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where it breaks for me. What do you mean clean up their act? They're a porn site.
Yeah.
You know what? If as a society we're going to condone the distribution of pornography as an industry, if that's going to be something that we as a society say it's okay, well, we're going to have the human trafficking. We're going to have the child sex abuse. We're going to have the rape. We're going to have all of this other stuff. There's no cleaning up the porn industry.
Pornography isn't clean.
You clean society up by getting rid of pornography.
Right.
Period.
I mean the pornography itself is the objectification of the human body into a plaything, and that never ends well. Never. Well, anyway, Pornhub did do a bunch of things. I don't understand it all.
They deleted a bunch of videos.
Yeah, they deleted a bunch of videos and made some new rules. It would be cool if MasterCard and Visa said, you know what? We're not going to
support porn.
Do business with pornography.
You can't use our card to buy porn. That would be great.
Yeah. They do that with other things. They do that with a lot of other things.
Oh, do they really? Like you can't use MasterCard to buy, I don't know, like certain kinds of explosives, chemicals, maybe, stuff like that?
Yeah, okay.
Things they consider dangerous?
Kratom, which is a legal substance. Mm-hmm. It is an opioid, and I'm not complaining about this. It is legal, and it could be, except for in a couple states. But so in Ohio, it can be sold. You can buy it at the gas station, and I can buy it online. But if MasterCard knows that that company is selling me Kratom, they will not let them use their service.
Okay. So yeah,
PayPal
why not
also
do the same thing for porn?
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer. That would be the big step. That's how to start. It's a start, but that's how to start cleaning things up when it comes to human trafficking.
But you know what? It's big money. I think there's pretty much money in it.
That's true, and I bet MasterCard alone, because, MasterCard gets a few cents out of every dollar transacted. Yeah. MasterCard alone probably gets millions from the porn industry.
Okay, there's another virus going around, H5N8. They're calling it avian influenza.
It's a flu virus. H5N is a flu virus.
Yeah. So there's it's a bird flu, and
it's another bird flu.
Yeah.
But
I don't understand. Is this
wasn't the Spanish flu a bird flu?
I don't know. Hold on. Let's go back to where I was on this. We started here.
Yeah. The Spanish flu was H1N1.
Okay.
And it was a bird flu.
Is this what did I call it?
H1N8?
H5N1.
Or H5N8.
And 8. Okay.
That's what you called it.
Okay, wait a minute. But it's not a people flu.
Oh. So why are they worried about it?
Because it's wiping out poultry farms.
Oh, that could be a problem. Yeah. Okay. That's a problem.
Yeah. And then the
so what are they doing about
it? But wait a minute.
Did it come from China?
I think it came from Japan. But H5N1, that was also a bird flu.
H5N1? You mean H1N1?
No. H5N1 and H5N8 because it compares it to H5N1.
Oh, okay. Well, see, H1N1.
I thought there was another flu going around.
So, H5N1 was an Asian virus that caused.
Why are there so many viruses coming out of Asia?
Sure. But it's a virus that originated in birds, just like H1N1 originated in birds.
Okay. I guess they're worried about it becoming a pandemic that will affect people. Right now,
because H5N1 was the bird flu epidemic of what year was that?
One of the less pathogenic subtypes for humans.
Okay.
It is beginning to become more pathogenic
for humans. Okay.
So I guess they're worried about it becoming more. It's only a low risk to humans now, but it is wiping out flocks of birds and poultry farms.
So, all right. So, are they trying to get a handle on it? Do they know how it's spreading? Is it?
As far as I know, they are, but it is spreading through wild birds sometimes.
Oh, that's the problem. Okay. So
I've been seeing it pop up in the news. I've always ignored it, but I've been seeing it mentioned more and more in the news.
Because I remember, with the bird flu, they went on a campaign where they had civilian volunteers taking shifts, watching the skies for birds flying across certain zones. Basically they tried to quarantine and keep all the birds local. So if birds,
they would say if you find a bird, don't touch it
and shoot them.
Well, we're keeping an eye on it now. I guess we'll see what happens.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we've got all kinds of. I mean, they're shooting more and more to shut us all down again because of COVID, and
which is that's they got more deaths from the fallout of these stupid COVID shutdowns than they do from the virus itself.
The thing
is... what I think the Fifth Amendment to our Constitution says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property, but it's that liberty part, without the due process of the law. And these governors just come in and give the word, no due process at all, and they're telling people you can't open your restaurant, you can't go to a restaurant, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think Donald Trump should enforce the Fifth Amendment in the states.
Yeah.
Say, no, you can't do that. We're gonna send our troops to keep your police from arresting people for exercising their Fifth Amendment rights.
I would love it if you would do that, but we know what's going on, and if he's going to stay in office, he's a bit distracted. It's going to have to be by force at this point. I think
he's a bit distracted right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
So they're having all these lockdowns, and I'm looking at pretty much across the board. The left's response to COVID-19 is always to stop acting, stop doing business, stay home, don't do anything. And Trump's response is always to act. Let's make more masks.
Make a vaccine.
Let's make more of these.
More masks.
Make a vaccine.
Make more,
build a hospital.
Ventilators. Yeah. Exactly.
Make more room in the hospitals. All these things he's saying, do this. And the left is always saying, don't do these.
That's a good point.
And it's so irritating that people,
go for it.
It's so irritating that the news doesn't report that people understand this. Maybe everyone understands this. Well, then again, maybe not, because I see people walking around, as we've talked about, with their masks and acting as if they're,
they're cool. Yeah. Hey, this is great.
They're like religious because they put their mask on. It's silly. Anyway, so the U.S. Senate approves a $740 billion National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year of 2021. It was 84 votes to 13. Trump, this is enough to overcome a veto.
Yeah.
Trump objects to it because of the Communications Decency Act that provides legal immunity to social media companies.
Why would they tie social media immunity to a defense spending bill?
I don't know.
Because they think Trump doesn't have the guts to veto it. That's probably why.
He can't veto it.
He can veto it, and then they have to go through the process of overriding the veto. It gets the vote, and then he can veto it even if they have enough votes to override it, but he can force them to actually go through the process of overriding it.
Okay. Well, the reason I don't know why they're doing this, except that, let's face it, the Twitter, Facebook, YouTube have helped the establishment keep their jobs.
Yeah.
And so I think this is what they get in return. Immunity, I guess, to do whatever the hell they want, including
what are they talking immunity from? What are they talking about? Immunity from
cooperate with foreign enemies.
Oh, okay. So now
China.
Google can cooperate with China,
Russia. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing. And I guess I wonder if this protects TikTok.
Oh, that could be because wow,
this is so bad.
Especially with Google and Twitter now saying, openly saying, we're going to control what people are allowed to call true and non-true,
right,
on our platforms, and now that's going to be subject to, we'll go ahead and answer to China on that,
right? And this is why I agree with you that okay, let's say Trump somehow legally pulls it off and gets into office. That's not enough anymore.
Yeah. No.
Something's got to be done. China is taking over this country. 4 more years of Trump will not stop it.
No.
So, I don't know what I'm advocating here.
My hope is that a massive rebellion against 4 more years of
Biden
may be what stops it.
I would hope. Led by Trump.
Hey, you know what? America, we don't need a general rebellion. America actually provided a model for how to do this. Even though the model failed the first time around, and rightly so, that doesn't mean that the model itself is invalid. It's called secession. A group of... Because we are a federation. That's what we are at our core, a federation of states. A group of states can say, we no longer want to be part of this federation. We're going to form our own federation. We could elect Trump as our president.
Yeah. So the big question is, I'm in Ohio, and Ohio isn't one of the states that secedes. Do I move or not?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't...
Especially if
I don't know
ends
which way
up
Indiana
becoming
would go,
a war.
actually. Yeah,
that's another thing. People are... When I hear people talk about, especially on the left, when I hear them talk about conservatives who talk about secession, it's almost like they just assume that would lead to war.
And it doesn't need to.
Yeah, as if it couldn't be done peacefully.
Right.
Which it could.
It could. Here's the difficult part about that, though. Here's why it would be difficult. New York, New England, and much of the East Coast down into Maryland and so forth, along with Washington, Oregon, and California on the West Coast, and maybe a couple other states out there, those are your one side, and then everything in the middle is your other side.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
I know.
You know, the geography makes it a little bit awkward.
Yeah. Well, we just got to keep praying.
Yeah.
And be ready to act if called to. South Korea bans the launching of propaganda leaflets into North Korea.
Oh, really?
That kind of got me scratching my head.
That's too bad. I wonder what their game is.
I don't know. But it was something they've been doing for decades, and now it's going to be against the law. Anyone who does it will face up to 3 years in prison, or up to about $27,000 in fine.
I don't. Maybe there was some kind of negotiation that was done that North Korea will break, and then they can go back to launching leaflets or something. I don't know.
Maybe. President Trump finally fired Barr.
Yep.
I know.
A
little too late now. He's only got. Well,
it's
I
like,
don't know.
Yeah. It's like wait until what could be your last month in office to fire him.
I know what hindsight is like, but to me, President Trump should have hired a guy and said, I want to see action within 1 month. If you don't have someone in chains within 1 month, you're fired.
Yeah,
and then go on to the next guy.
Right.
The United States Department of Treasury formally labels Switzerland and Vietnam as currency manipulators.
Really? Switzerland? Just because of their I wonder if they're doing that.
Trying to manipulate the cost of the U.S. dollar, or the price of the U.S. dollar.
Okay, are they actually doing that, or is labeling them that a retaliation for the fact that the Swiss don't like to, they like to respect people's privacy?
Yeah, I don't know. Switzerland rejects the label. I don't think Vietnam cares. Yeah. And that's all the news I got.
Both kind of puny countries. How much can they manipulate?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was Hong Kong, I could see. I mean, Hong Kong actually, un-China-fied Hong Kong actually likes us. But I mean, Hong Kong's a big financial power center. Switzerland could. Yeah, that's true, because they're a big financial power center too.
A lot of rich people go to Switzerland, and a lot of rich bad people hide in Switzerland, don't they?
Or at least hide their money there.
Yeah, so Switzerland might be able to do it. Not so much I can't understand Vietnam.
Yeah.
Trying to, whatever. All right, that's all I got, though.
All right. Well, a couple of weird newses. In fact, I say a couple, and it really is just two.
Okay.
Apparently in Florida, they're having problems. You think of Florida like down in the Everglades. Obviously, you've got alligators. Obviously, you've got sharks. Apparently, they also have problems with pythons now. So they're training dogs. Yeah, the snake. They're training dogs to sniff out and hunt pythons.
Is this are they not native to there, or?
I mean, they're called Burmese pythons. In fact, so I'm thinking, no, they're not native. There must be things that people brought over as exotic pets, and then they get tired of taking care of them. They let them go. It says they estimate between 100 and 300,000 pythons in the Florida Everglades. They've been known to eat small alligators. Can you imagine that? That's so weird.
They're going to run out of alligators.
Do
you remember a picture of a boa wrapped around a giant crocodile?
No, I don't. Is that a thing we had?
Do you remember? Dad had this set of books, and I can't remember who the publisher was, but they were more or less science books, and there was one on evolution, there was one on mammals, there was one on different things. And one of the pictures,
I always would look at the one on space. I remember the books you're talking about.
Yeah, one of them had a picture of it was a full-size crocodile, and it was wrapped up with a full-size, I guess it was like the Amazonian.
Yeah, probably a python.
Yeah.
Or anaconda, maybe.
That's what I was trying to think of, the anaconda.
I don't remember that picture, but that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's funny, though. I wouldn't have thought, but yeah, I guess it makes sense. Snakes are a little bit more versatile than the crocodiles. But, I would have thought that snakes would prefer softer-skinned animals in terms of food.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the digestive tract, can they even get through all them scales and stuff? Don't they cough up the skeleton? Or does that all get digested?
No, it doesn't get digested. I don't know if they cough it up.
Wait a minute,
back out.
It does.
Does it really? Like if they eat a rat,
you know what? I'll have to ask Bella.
It back up? No,
I do remember a video, one of those wildlife videos, the Mutual of Omaha. I remember they showed a snake eating a egg.
Yeah.
And it swallowed the egg whole, and then like 5 minutes later, it coughed up the shell.
Okay. You know what? I bet they do cough the skeletons back out.
But
maybe they can do that with alligators too.
Bella's got a snake, and I don't think it does. I think it digests.
Does she feed it rats?
Mice.
Ask her.
Hold on.
If she's there.
Bella, your snake, when you feed it a mouse, does it just digest the whole thing, or does it cough up the bone? Okay. It digests the whole thing.
Okay. So,
it digests the whole thing.
I
had to say it twice because I didn't know how close to the mic I was.
Oh, yeah, we heard you both times. No, that's some digestive system.
Yeah.
Like,
so I guess...
like hydrochloric acid and its or sulfuric acid as its digestive juices or something.
Well, of course, if you're feeding a dog, if you give it chicken bones, you're
not supposed to feed him chicken bones
because the bones are cooked. But if you feed it uncooked bones, it can eat those and it will digest them.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
That's what I was told by a dog person.
Oh, okay.
He said if you got raw chicken, you could throw it the whole thing, it'll eat it, it'll crunch the bones, and it will digest them, and it won't hurt coming out. But if you give it raw bone or cooked bones, it can actually cut up their insides as it's moving through the system.
Yeah. Because
they'll eat the bones regardless. So I guess it probably does digest the whole alligator.
Wow. Anyway, problem in Florida, apparently.
Okay.
So hope they take care of it.
Yeah.
All right. Because the Everglades are cool. We need the alligators.
Right.
All right. And so my final point, apparently the city of Gary, Indiana, Service Sanitation.
Gary, Indiana.
Exactly, that Gary, Indiana. Does an annual light show to set to music with animated faces on port-o-potties that lip sync to the songs. They call it the... Yeah, you heard that right.
So you've got a set of port-o-potties and they shine a projector on it? Like that?
It looks to me, I mean, I'm looking at an image and it looks like what they do is outline it with those like lines of LED strings that that form different lines that they can light up.
Okay, so it'd be more like Christmas lights flashing in different ways to make it look like it's talking?
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They call it the Jingle John's A Lighted Lou Experience. And part of it, they say, set the record for the most animated faces on a single holiday light display. They had a 32 toilet rendition of Hallelujah.
I don't know if I like. Have you ever
I don't know if I like that or not. Huh?
Have you ever been to Gary, Indiana?
I've been through it. I have to drive through it once in a while to go to Chicago.
Okay, so I had to drive through Chicago, and I had to drive through Gary, Indiana on the way back from Chicago. I went through Gary, Indiana. And
very depressed.
I tell you
it's like
what,
the whole city is like take a depressed part of, say, Cincinnati, and it's like the whole city of Gary, Indiana is like that.
Right, and it's like there's a toll booth every 5 feet, and I don't know if that was right outside of Gary, Indiana, or I don't know where I was that I kept hitting these toll booths. I was trying to get away from Chicago. Man, Chicago is so huge.
Yeah.
You drive 2 hours
and you're still
going 65 miles an hour, and you're still in Chicago.
Just getting, yep, I know.
I had no idea that city awful. Was that big. But,
well, Chicago is, it's like the Illinois used to have their, they used to vote by, when they were selecting, I forget, I think it was their senators, they were selecting like each county would get a vote or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was a Supreme Court case that under the doctrine of one man, one vote, or one person, one vote, they said, no, you can no longer do it by county. Basically, everybody in the state gets to vote, and then just the popular majority decides your senators that you send to the U.S. Senate or whatever. But the thing is, there's enough people in Cook County alone, which is where Chicago is, to overwhelm the entire rest of the state. If everybody in Chicago voted one way and everybody in the entire rest of the state voted the other way, Chicago wins.
Yeah, that's believable. It's so huge. But I was trying to get away from there, and I was headed toward Gary.
Oh, so you're
and
going
it just
south.
seemed like every 20 minutes I was stopping at a toll booth to pay a toll, and some of them were like $10.
There's a section of Chicago that's like that. Yeah, expensive.
There's
a section of Chicago that's like that. I don't know if Gary has toll booths, but there's.
I might have still been in
Chicago. Like that.
I can't remember. It was actually dark, and I just wanted to get home.
Yeah.
But wow, gosh, it's quite a place.
Yeah. Anyway, if you're lucky enough to go to Chicago, or to Gary rather, maybe you can check out their singing porta-johns.
If I have any reason to be in Gary, Indiana, I will try to find the singing port-o-potties.
All right, that's all I got. Just the 2 stories this time.
Well, folks, think about what we said, and as always,
circle the beads.
Circle the beads.
Keep circling.
And be ready for... I just keep saying it. Be ready for action.
That's right.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.